Ganvié means we survived. That's the name of the place, not the name of a founder, not a word for water or fish or lake. The name that people chose for where they live is simply the thing they managed to do. Before anything else about this village makes sense, that's the first thing you need to carry with you. Farlamp. Lake Nokaway sits in the south of Benin, in West Africa, about 25 kilometers from Cotonou, the country's largest city. The lake is wide and shallow. In most places, you could stand up in it. And across its surface, built on thousands of wooden stilts driven into the lakebed, is a community of roughly 30,000 people who have lived here for nearly 4 centuries. There are no roads, no cars, no pavements. Every home is a stilt house above the water. Every journey, to a neighbor, to the market, to school, begins with a canoe. Visitors who arrive here for the first time often expect something provisional, a village that looks like a temporary settlement, like people who ended up on the water by accident and are making the best of it. What they find instead is a place that has arranged itself entirely and deliberately around what it is. The market floats, the church is on stilts, there is a police post on stilts, a post office, a bank, a hotel. Ganvié didn't adapt reluctantly to the water. It built itself into the water and stayed. Every family here keeps at least 3 canoes. One belongs to the father. He uses it each morning to fish. One belongs to the mother, who paddles the catch to the mainland market in Cotonou to sell. The third belongs to the children. It's how they get to school. Children in Ganvié learn to handle a canoe before they can properly walk. This is not a figure of speech. The lake is the floor of their world from the first day. But the residents of Ganvié have also, over the years, created small patches of artificial land on the lake, soil brought in from the shore, enough to keep a few animals, enough for something more particular, enough for a child to learn to walk, enough to run on. The school is built on one of these patches. The residents decided they wanted their children to have a football field, so they made land for it. To understand how a community of 30,000 people ended up on a lake in West Africa, you have to go back to the 17th century, when this was not a place anyone would have chosen. The Kingdom of Dahomey, one of the most powerful kingdoms in the region, had a working arrangement with Portuguese slave traders. Dahomey warriors raided surrounding peoples, capturing men, women, and children to be sold. The Tofinu, who lived near the shores of Lake Nokaway, were among those in their path. The Tofinu had no military answer to the Dahomey, but they knew something the warriors believed. The lake was sacred. The Fon considered the water to be inhabited by powerful spirits, forces that no soldier should challenge or cross. It was not a physical obstacle that kept the warriors out. It was belief. Here is the thing about that. The Tofinu shared that belief. They were afraid of the lake too. The same spirits, the same sacred water. And they went in anyway. They built the first shelters on stilts above the surface. The warriors arrived at the shore and did not follow. It worked. What grew from that is 4 centuries of life on the water. The Tofinu didn't leave when the slave trade ended. They didn't leave when the Dahomey kingdom fell. They didn't leave when the French colonizers arrived in the 19th century and tried to dismantle the village, seeing it as a symbol of defiance. The villagers negotiated and stayed. Generation after generation was born on the lake, grew up on the lake, learned what it means to live somewhere where the ground moves and the roads are liquid. Voodoo, the spiritual tradition that originated in this part of West Africa, is still practiced in Ganvié. Its rituals held on the water like everything else. There is a floating market where traders move between the houses in canoes, the way vendors in any other city move through streets. The fish that the men catch each morning and the women sell in Cotonou by afternoon is the same economic cycle the village has run on for hundreds of years. But the lake is not what it was. There is no sewage system in Ganvié. Waste goes into the water. Lake Nokoué also receives runoff and pollution from Cotonou and surrounding industry. The fish population has been declining. Water hyacinth, an invasive plant, spreads across the surface in thick mats, blocking canoe channels, cutting off oxygen to the lake beneath. The Tofinu people moved onto water because land had become too dangerous. What threatens them now is not something they can escape by moving. When you sit in a canoe in the middle of Ganvié and let the water settle around you, what you are surrounded by is 400 years of a decision someone made in desperation that turned into something permanent. The stilts in the water are old. Some houses are newer, some older, some built now with concrete instead of wood. The corrugated metal roofs replaced thatch a long time ago. Nothing about this place is frozen. It has changed continuously for 4 centuries, in the ways that living things change, slowly, in response to what life brings. The name, though, hasn't changed. They called it Ganvié. We survived. And what is interesting is that surviving was the beginning, not the end. What came after it was a world. Schools and markets and churches and fishing cycles and children learning to paddle and artificial patches of ground so those children could also learn to run. We survived is how the story started. This is what surviving looks like 400 years in.